Let's talk about how I make quizzes for lectures, for example. This is a beginner's guide. I do teach for several years now, and I had the chance to experience several formats. Nevertheless, I consider myself still a beginner. In this video, I will share with you how I make quizzes, what's their purpose even, and how I use AI tools to assist me in that endeavor. Why do quizzes even matter? There are two reasons why I use quizzes in all of my lectures. The first reason is to activate the students, and this happens mainly at the beginning of a lecture. And the second reason is to do quick knowledge checks and to also give the students a chance to reflect. Check out my video on how to plan a lecture. I have given you the framework of how I base my lecture with the input sessions and, for example, the quizzes. Quizzes give you breaks as an educator that you can also take a breath. And they chop down lectures into digestible parts for the students. A good workflow overview is 3 steps. First, define the purpose of the quiz. So in which section of the lecture you want to have the quiz and what's the purpose. And that defines a little bit of what type of quiz you would also choose. Second, choose a question type. I will give you an overview of question types that you can choose from. And third, use AI tools, large language models, to assist you to make better quizzes. So let's start with the purpose of the quiz. When the lecture starts, a quiz can serve the purpose of checking the knowledge of the audience. So what previous knowledge do they bring to the lecture? That's good for you then to pick that up in the progress of the lecture, and it gives the students also the chance to share where they are, and it's not like you're talking all the time and you totally miss the point that everybody knows this and that aspect, but you should have maybe emphasized another aspect more which they have not known before. So checking previous knowledge is very handy at the beginning of a lecture. Activation is another purpose that you would put at the beginning of the lecture, student activation. And for such student activation, you would start really simple, and I often like to use an open question. What do you know about? Put in keywords using a word cloud, for example. So we have here Bloom's level 1, and that is knowing things. In the middle section of the lecture, using a quiz to chop down the lecture into digestible chunks, the quiz serves the purpose of solidifying the new information and learning together and brainstorming based on the newly learned aspect. So that is more Bloom's level 2, maybe even 3 already. And a quiz at the end of the lecture can serve as already a self-test of if the conceptual framework of the newly learned material has been successfully learned. That could be a Bloom's level 3 question. And I will give you examples for all of this. So the workflow for doing quizzes is like this. Define the purpose. We have done that now. And then we choose a question type based on the purpose. And we then third enhance our quiz making with AI assistance. Let's recap quickly the Bloom's pyramid of cognitive aspects of learning. You can see here the pyramid, and at the base there is the knowing, and then the understanding and applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. So you can already see that if you ask in the beginning of a lecture, what do you know? You're really at Bloom's level 1. If you want to check if the knowledge is solidified of the input that you just gave, it's more Bloom's level 2, so do the students understand. And if you want to prepare them for the exam and put this all in a bigger context and elevate the information, we are at Bloom's level 3. I'm always talking for beginner level studies and bachelor, so a bachelor university degree or college degree. And so I would stick with those 3 Bloom's levels. Now, what are the core question formats? Now it gets exciting. We all know multiple choice. Multiple choice questions do have their point, so they exist for a reason. We just don't like them when exams are purely multiple choice questions. It's really easy to build them. They have the lowest effort, but also they have the lowest learning benefit. Nevertheless, to trigger activation and start a discussion, multiple choice questions are great in lectures. Imagine you have an online setting, you're teaching remote, and you put 3 multiple choice questions, then the students answer, they scan a QR code, they answer your questions, you get a bar diagram of the answer distribution, and you can use this as a hook for your intensified explanations, or maybe an explanation using a whiteboard or something like that. So they have their reason to exist. There is a possibility for multiple response questions, so that's multiple choice where multiple responses are true. Same thing, easy to make, but lowest benefit of learning. Interesting is a true-false type of question. This triggers more complex thinking, especially if the true-false answers are really smartly designed. Fill in the blanks is sometimes a good test and preparation for the exam if there is certain keywords that are really, really central and important to get right. You just have to be careful not to be dogmatic, but if it's to check certain keywords, certain order of events, things that only are said in a certain way, fill in the blanks is great. Short answer questions are my personal favorite. This prepares excellently for the exam because also most exams are open short answer questions oftentimes. You learn the most with those open short answer questions. Matching is a great possibility because then you give the students, especially when it's a new topic, you give them already the precise names, keywords, phrases, but they have to put them into relationship. They have to match them and connect them. So that's really great for learning too. And then there is ordering and sequence. That is really handy if you teach pathways, for example. Now, where can AI tools help us? They can help us to generate such questions quickly, especially in science, undergraduate studies. Of course, all the information is online. So if you don't have a script or any PowerPoint presentation, you could generate quizzes on any topic using a large language model. Needless to say, you have to control for the correct answers and that everything is correct. Yeah? But where I find AI assistance is really helpful, if I make a lecture, I usually also have a script and I have my notes and I can feed this script into an AI tool and I can let the AI tool generate specific questions exactly using the wording also from the script and the PowerPoint presentation. So it's much closer to the exact content of what you want to teach. What's especially handy, large language models are great applying the Bloom's categories. So you can tell the AI tool what topic, what type of question, the purpose was defined, and then the purpose was driving the type of the question. And you select from this choice that you have. And then you can tell the AI tool what Bloom's level this question or quiz should be. And then you will get appropriate suggestions and you can use it and you can also modulate based on it. As a beginner educator, you're sometimes just stuck because you don't have an idea of how this works and how this looks like. So what I did, I tested this with the AI assistant and then I got an idea of how these types of questions look on different Bloom levels. And this helped me to make them myself, basically. If you already have questions, maybe from a colleague or a previous lecture or an exam or whatever, you can feed them and you can paraphrase, shuffle the answers. So AI tools are very handy and they save you time for these tedious tasks. So you can just generate variety from what's already existing. And then the third point where large language models are really helpful is if you want to already make your quizzes fit a certain format for uploading to a, for example, learning platform, or for providing them in the framework of Microsoft Teams when you use Microsoft Forms. So there also large language models are really helpful because they know how these systems work and what you have to do and what format you have to feed these systems. So they're great assistants if used right. Now we come to the examples. I chose for the example the topic of apoptosis. First, I show you a simple multiple choice question, very simple one. Which organelle is central to intrinsic apoptosis? The 4 answers provided are nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus. And the correct answer is mitochondria. That's more a Bloom's Level 1 question. So if you want to know in the beginning of the lecture, what do the students know already about this? You could choose such a question and then see, oh, they all learned it in school, if it's a bachelor or a college degree, or maybe people mix up the nucleus and the mitochondria, or you can build on that question. Now, if you want to have a little bit of variety, I will give you now 4 examples of how to vary the apoptosis question. So a true-false question could be, apoptosis causes inflammation. Is the statement true or false? It's false because necrosis causes inflammation. Apoptosis does not cause inflammation. That's something that people learn in this type of lecture. Fill in the blanks if you want to specify that the students know the term caspase. Fill in the blank caspases are proteases essential for apoptosis. That would be very helpful, makes sense. Matching, you can come up with all types of ideas for matching in this context. And short answer, you could ask for a difference, one difference between apoptosis versus necrosis, or you could ask two differences. So that's pretty obvious and pretty clear, right? And the level of thinking and the cognitive level of brain activity goes up. Short answer is the most engaging here. Now, what do we do if we have now put all of the information out there and we would like to really get the students thinking and also check if the main concepts, so the features, the facts, but also the concepts and differences, commonalities and so on of certain aspects of what you just taught are understood. Then you can do, for example, sequence the steps of intrinsic apoptosis. Give them just the keywords or give them no keywords and let them write it down. What I love more is having a short case vignette. So taking the students away from this, I learned the words, the professor or lecturer is telling me stuff and I repeat what I heard, and taking them out of this bubble into a case, into the real world. And I have an example here. The example is a short case vignette on apoptosis versus necrosis. And remember, this has nothing to do with medicine or medical studies, but it's a case vignette. And you can answer this question and discuss these points without having medical knowledge with the information about apoptosis and necrosis, commonalities and differences. A 20-year-old college student develops infectious mononucleosis. Liver biopsy as part of the research study revealed scattered single cells with cell shrinkage, chromatin condensation, and membrane blabbing. These isolated cells are being rapidly engulfed by Kupffer cells with no sign of inflammation. A 65-year-old man with uncontrolled diabetes presents with a foot ulcer. Tissue taken from the ulcer margin shows large areas of disrupted cell membranes, extensive cell swelling, and a pronounced infiltration of inflammatory cells in the surrounding tissue. The question is, which scenario illustrates apoptosis and which illustrates necrosis? But don't only say A or B, say provide the evidence from each case. So what do we have? We have all the information in the text. We don't need to know what mononucleosis is or what Kupffer cells are, but we immediately spot single cells with cell shrinkage, chromatin condensation, and membrane blabbing, and then no sign of inflammation. That is characteristic of apoptosis. With a 65-year-old man, we don't need to know what a foot ulcer is, and we find every indication of why this is necrosis in the text, because it says that the biopsy, the tissue taken from the ulcer margins, shows large areas of disrupted cell membranes, extensive cell wall swelling, and a pronounced infiltration of inflammatory cells. So there is inflammation. This is all a hallmark of necrosis. So this is in line with what students would know at this point about necrosis. Yeah, that's how I make quizzes for my lectures. And they are not only helpful for the students, but they are also helpful for me if I taught the correct way. So a checklist for you is define the purpose of the quiz, choose the question type based on Bloom's levels, and mix also question types for having a bit of more variety so that it's not getting boring. Don't overload your lectures with quizzes. One is enough in the middle and one for activation, and maybe one vignette in the end. And then you can enhance all this with AI assistants. The key benefits of quizzes during lectures are they focus the learning, it's extremely helpful, and it gives immediate feedback to us, the lecturers, but also to the students, what they might have to look into when they learn at home. So there we are. Try build your first quiz today. You can choose any topic, just try it out. And experiment with formats, what works for you, how does it feel, where do you think in what direction, explore AI tools, how they can help you as assistants, learn how to prompt clearly, and based on your own experience you can ask for specific context. Subscribe for more teaching content, and happy teaching!